Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, I will talk about the history of Palestine and Israel, which covers a century of political, social, and cultural developments. The conflict between the two peoples has its roots in the late 19th century, when Zionists sought to establish a homeland for the Jewish people in Ottoman-controlled Palestine, while Arab nationalists opposed the idea and claimed the land as their own. Here is a brief overview of some of the key events and issues that have shaped the history of Palestine and Israel. Balfour Declaration, 1917. The British government, which had gained control of Palestine after World War I, issued a statement that expressed support for the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine, also promising to safeguard the rights and interests of the existing non-Jewish communities. The declaration was seen as a major victory by the Zionists, but also provoked resentment and resistance from the Arabs. The UN Partition Plan, 1947. After World War II and the Holocaust, international pressure mounted for the creation of a Jewish state in Palestine. The United Nations proposed a plan to divide the land into two states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem as an international city. The plan was accepted by the Jewish leadership, but rejected by the Arab states and the Palestinian leadership, who regarded it as unfair and unjust. The War of Independence, 1948 to 1949. Following the declaration of Israel's independence in May 1948, neighboring Arab countries invaded the new state, aiming to prevent its establishment and restore Palestinian sovereignty. The war resulted in Israel's victory and expansion of its territory beyond the borders of the UN Partition Plan. It also led to the displacement of about 700,000 Palestinians, who became refugees in neighboring countries or within Israel itself. The Palestinians call this event the Nakba, or catastrophe, and it remains a source of trauma and grievance for them. The Six-Day War, 1967. Israel launched a preemptive attack against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, who were perceived as preparing to invade Israel. The war ended with Israel's occupation of the West Bank, Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, Sinai Peninsula, and Golan Heights. The war also marked the beginning of Israel's settlement policy in the occupied territories, which aimed to create facts on the ground that would make it difficult to return them to Arab control. The Palestinians living under Israeli military rule faced restrictions on their movement, civil rights, and access to land and resources. The First Intifada, 1987 to 1993. A popular uprising by Palestinians in the occupied territories against Israeli occupation and repression. The Intifada involved mass demonstrations, civil disobedience, strikes, boycotts, and stone-throwing against Israeli soldiers and settlers. It also saw the emergence of militant groups such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad, who carried out armed attacks and suicide bombings against Israeli targets. The Intifada drew international attention and sympathy to the Palestinian cause, and put pressure on Israel to negotiate a political solution. The Oslo Accords, 1993 to 1995. A series of agreements between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, which recognized each other as legitimate representatives of their peoples. The accords established a framework for a gradual transfer of authority from Israel to a Palestinian interim self-government in parts of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. They also envisioned a final status agreement on issues such as borders, security, settlements, refugees, and Jerusalem within 5 years. However, the implementation of the accords was hampered by mutual distrust, violence, political opposition, and lack of compliance by both sides. The Second Intifada, 2000 to 2005. A renewed outbreak of violence following the failure of the Camp David summit in 2000 and Ariel Sharon's visit to the Temple Mount/Haram al-Sharif in Jerusalem, which was seen by Palestinians as a provocation. The Second Intifada was more violent and deadly than the first one, involving armed clashes between Israeli forces and Palestinian militants, as well as suicide bombings and rocket attacks against Israeli civilians. Israel responded with harsh measures such as assassinations, incursions, sieges, curfews, checkpoints, closures, demolitions, and arrests. It also began building a separation barrier along and inside the West Bank, which was condemned by Palestinians as an attempt to annex their land and isolate them from each other and from Jerusalem. The Gaza disengagement, 2005. A unilateral decision by Israel to withdraw its troops and settlers from the Gaza Strip, while maintaining control over its borders, airspace, and waters. The disengagement was intended to reduce friction with the Palestinians and improve Israel's security and international standing. However, it also created a power vacuum in Gaza that was filled by Hamas, which won parliamentary elections in 2006 and ousted Fatah from Gaza in 2007. Since then, Gaza has been under a blockade by Israel and Egypt and has witnessed several rounds of armed conflict with Israel, resulting in widespread destruction and human suffering. The peace process, 2007 present. Several attempts have been made to revive the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians, such as the Annapolis Conference in 2007, the indirect talks in 2010, the direct talks in 2013 to 2014, and the US-led peace plan in 2020. However, none of these efforts have yielded any significant breakthroughs or agreements, due to deep divisions and mistrust between the parties, as well as internal and external challenges and pressures. The main obstacles to peace remain the same: the status of Jerusalem, the fate of the refugees, the borders and security arrangements, and the issue of the settlements. This is a brief summary of the history of Palestine and Israel.